Hello and welcome everyone to another Sales Hacker webinar. I hope these are a fun part of your week where you get some human interaction and get to pause and kind of level up, certainly now more than ever. It's great to use some of this time to get better at your craft. And we certainly have a great discussion lined up for you today. I'm excited for this one. I am joined by my good friend who looks like he's living in Malibu, like the life right now, Peter Chun. Hello. Did we just get kicked out? Peter, can you hear me?
We did. I did, and then I got back in. Can you hear me
Okay,
now?
cool. I can.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go. I don't know if that was on us or if that's Zoom adding something like 20 million users in such a short
Just
period
make
of
it
time.
interesting. It's to show that this is real. This is what
This is
everyone
live.
deals with every day.
Showbiz, baby. I love it.
It is.
That's a crazy thing to think about. Imagine being Zoom. They're so focused on growth, and now they just have all these other problems of scalability and security. And kudos to them, but I imagine it's such a crazy ride. Anyway, so for all of those trickling in, we had great registration for this webinar, so really excited to hang out with everyone. But let's try that again. I am joined by my good friend, Peter Chun. Peter, welcome, man.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Aloha, everyone. I wish I were really in Hawaii. Got the Aloha shirt going, but I'm actually joining here from Salt Lake City, Utah.
Nice, man. Nice. I was saying before we jumped on, I'm actually going on vacation next week, so this vibe, it feels like a setup.
We're getting you ready, right?
Exactly.
We're prepping you.
Not going overseas, nowhere super fun, but going to a lake house in BC. So I'm coming at you all from Vancouver, Canada. And so what we're going to talk about today is a little focus on kind of sales leadership and how you can digitally walk around your sales floor. So we're now in this new abnormal, which I'm calling it now. I don't think it's a new normal because there's nothing normal about it. And we're going to talk about ways where you can keep productivity high, still hopefully hit those targets and just keep motivation up as your team. So we've got a great discussion lined up, and it will be kind of a Q&A, casual conversational style. But when we do these Sales Hacker Lives, so much more fun when the community gets involved. So I love hearing who's hanging out with us, who is here live. I can see a ton of you. So there is a chat feature there. If you want to go introduce your name, your title, where you're zooming in from, we'd love to hear who we're hanging out with. And I've got a ton of questions that I've been dying to ask Peter because we haven't caught up in a long time.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a minute.
It has. It certainly has. But we do want you guys in the driver's seat. So there's also a Q&A. So chat will be used. Introduce yourself, say what's up, talk amongst each other. Q&A is where if you have any formal questions that kind of pertain to the topic, please jump in there, and I'll be fielding questions from there. Two other things before we get into it. A huge thank you to Lucidchart for sponsoring this webinar, of course. And this will be recorded. So if you have to hop off, if your dog is biting your ankle, or you've got kids screaming in the background, or one of the many challenges that come with working remote, feel free to hop off. We're going to send this out within 24 hours. And what else am I missing there? Yeah, just make sure that you guys are getting involved. We're going to have a couple polls and things throughout. Shout out Emily. Shout out Adrian, Janelle, John, Merrick from Vancouver. Vancouver, what's up? Ralph, Kelly, John, Janelle again. Thank you all for hanging out with us. All right, man. So before we go right into the topic, would love for for those who don't know, Peter, don't know Lucid, can you tell a little bit just about your background, how
Yeah.
you came to be a VP of sales at such a cool, fast-growing company?
Yeah, would love to. So Peter Chun, originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, hence the yellow shirt in the background, and hopefully the laid back vibe that you get from this webinar. I got my SaaS career started at a small company at the time, InsideSales.com, here in Provo, Utah. And I'd come out to Utah for school, studied economics, got into SaaS, and since it was a sales platform selling to sales professionals, we really had to understand the craft, and that's where I just fell in love with this notion of the intersection of the science of sales and where it meets the art of sales, and have been on this path since. Ended up at a company called HireView a couple years later, and then ended up moving over to Lucidchart. At the time, it was a small diagramming company, and now we really pride ourselves in being a visual productivity platform, helping the world solve innovation and collaborative challenges within their teams. We believe that our best work is done visually, and our best communication is most effective when done visually. And then it led us to launch our sales solution, our Lucidchart sales solution, a couple years ago. And then that's why we've been really working together with folks like yourself and other friends in the industry. And it's something, again, it aligns really well to my personal passion about this idea of maximizing sales productivity and scaling out sales orgs and successful sales teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been a big fan of Lucidchart for a long time. Everyone I've met from Lucid is just such a good human. So you guys do a great job hiring, and the product is amazing too. To give people just a understanding kind of the scope, how many reps roll up to you? Roughly how many people are now at Lucid? Can you give a little bit of kind of metrics around there?
Yeah, thank you. We've been, it's been an exciting time at Lucid, despite everything that's been going on. We've been really fortunate to continue to grow and to keep focused on this path. We just recently, just this past year, you can see it on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn Insights, we broke the 600 mark in terms of our employee size, employee count. And in my orgs, I oversee essentially commercial business, right? And so think of it as your corporate account executives, your closers. We define that segment as 201 to 2,500 employees, size companies. We also have our emerging markets team that covers, think of it as like your small, medium-sized business teams covering 1 to 200 employees, closers there. And then I also have the setting teams, right? So we have our lead response teams. They're really optimizing for quick response time on our inbound leads. And then also our SDR, our sales development teams that help with the outbound, the account development there. And then I also have an ISR team, our inside sales team that supports our incredible enterprise team as well. And we do have some field teams as well. So in our org, we've added a few more heads, even with all that's going on. So we just broke about 100 in headcount in my org. But it's been great. It's been an awesome ride, and we're excited to see where it continues to take us.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
That's no easy feat to manage. It's so different. You've gone through all these evolutions, managing, just a handful, and then bigger and bigger and bigger, and they all come with their own slew of problems. And now, arguably, you might be facing one of the biggest ones that you've had to face. I'm sure, as many are. How many of those? So about 100 reps, between the different teams. How many before COVID were in office, and how many were field or dispersed remotely?
Of that group, actually, 2 were remote. Everyone else was actually in the office. It's our enterprise team that really has started building out the field org, and so it was a big change for us. So I'm excited to kind of unpack some of the challenges, experiences that we've had. Hopefully, share that with everyone joining. And again, also, I'll echo Scott's sentiment. Thank you all for joining. It's so great. It's humbling that you take time out of your day to join us. So thank you. And Scott, to your point, as we've grown, it's all because of really great people, like you mentioned. I'm thrilled to hear that you've been impressed with the people that you've encountered from Lucid. I'll say the same with Sales Hacker and Outreach. We appreciate the relationships that are built there, and all the crazy cool things that we do aren't possible without these wonderful people. So
totally. All goes back to that the old the framework of people, process, technology. I go back to that
Yeah, that's spot on.
so often when I'm making decisions or trying to prioritize what to do, and it's just like people. It all goes back to people. The process, the technology comes after those, and if you get those flipped around, you can get in murky waters quickly.
Totally.
All right, man. So I'm going to have this an intentionally broad challenge question, and it is just around, what are the challenges you're seeing? There's obvious ones, there's not so obvious ones, but specifically to Lucid, your day to day right now, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing out there in the current landscape? Let's paint the picture before we try and solve the problem.
Yeah, for sure. So in the current landscape, from the sales perspective, especially the teams that I just illustrated, right? And we're selling into, everything from SMB up through your commercial mid-market. And, everyone, there's uncertainty in the market, right? And because of that uncertainty, because you're seeing, some companies having to go through these challenges of cutting back, some are unfortunately going through layoffs, having to make crazy pivots. And you see these challenges from the sales side of selling into these companies, right? Getting them to spend even more so, right? The perceived value of the budgets has increased, and so there's a challenge of being able to get those deals across the finish line. You'll see, we often see deals that just fall apart, right? When this transition first happened, hey, look, we don't know what's going on. There's no budget. Budgets are frozen. We can't talk. To now it's loosening up, but still, hey, there's an increased scrutiny. Right now, before we could sign off on this, and we were talking offline before this, right? We're seeing other companies talk about how there's more stakeholders now involved in these deals, where before, they could get we knew who we needed to talk to and what boxes to check. It's changing, right? The environment's changing, so that's a big challenge. It's a changing landscape, the increased scrutiny on budgets, increased stakeholders that need to get involved. And just the mentality right now that there's some fear out there in the market right now of, we don't know if we want to spend, we don't want to be too aggressive, we want to expand and implement a new product solution at this time, etc.
Yeah,
it's a real challenge. Fear
is a big part of it, certainly. And you said something there that I thought was very on point. Is this? It's not that there isn't budget still out there. People have slush funds, there's budgets, there's still money circulating, but the perceived value, let's say you had a $100,000 in budget. Now people's perception of that $100,000, like you said, is much higher than that, actually, because they have this scarcity mindset of we might not have this for long. So they might be thinking that as it's, worth $300,000 in this environment.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing to think about. As a leader, as sellers, how would you coach to sort of get ahead of that? In my eyes, I guess you have to build a stronger business case and really focus on hard ROI. There's no, soft intangibles in there anymore. You really have to.
Right. You really have to. Yeah, that's a great question. You really have to drive and do deep discovery. Right. And really understand the business value there, understand the initiatives. We subscribe to Skip Miller's proactive selling, and this idea of finding those trains, right? What are the trains? What are these big business initiatives that are going to move the needle in helping our customer either increase their revenue or decrease costs and expenses and spend? And so, that's a big part of the coaching is now a refocus and a extra laser focus on uncovering these business issues. Other part in terms of deal coaching is, like I said before, now there's more people that are involved. And so having that conversation early, you had talked about, I think you mentioned it was a conversation last week, right? Great, huge sales org. They do great deals, great name. And they now have to change their mentality to, okay, let's approach every deal like we're selling into the CFO, because this conversation is most likely going to pass the desk of the CFO. And so I think that's a big part of it too, is coaching your teams to change the mindset, change the way that they're approaching these deals, knowing that there's going to be increased scrutiny, knowing that there's going to be a little bit more of a battle to really drive and attach to the ROI that you're providing.
Yeah, totally. And we can name drop. So that was a conversation I had. Thank you, with Alyssa Merwin, VP of Sales of LinkedIn, last week. It's on YouTube. It was a great conversation, and she was talking about how they're treating every deal like they're selling to the CFO now, because it's going, whatever your deal is, even if it's a 5K deal, it's going across the CFO's desk right now. Everything is so scrutinized. And quickly, it's very uncommon that someone will mention a sales book that I actually haven't heard of, or a methodology. You said skip selling?
Skip Miller, it's proactive selling. Yeah.
Proactive selling. Okay, cool. I know our community always loves books. Proactive Selling by Skip Miller. I haven't checked what that one. What's kind of the premise behind that?
Yeah, the book is selling above and below the line, and the idea is, you have these above the line buyers, your executive buyers, and then you have below the line buyers, right? Your user buyers, and all too often we get distracted we'll either get in the trap of just staying below the line because they're easier to access, right? The user buyers. They're our champions, our point of contact that's going to help us get the deal done. Or we only go after the executive buyers and we neglect those user buyers. And so the idea behind it is to understand that there's two different personas in there that you're selling into, and understand the language and the things that matter to them. Yeah. And then this premise, like I mentioned, the trains, right? The analogy is pretend that whoever you're talking to is a train station master, right? And they've got trains in their station, and the trains need to be out. They want their trains out there, either making money for them, or saving money for them. And so you need to work with your prospects and your customers to understand what the trains are, identify those trains, and help them get those trains out there and get them making money. And then this premise that the trains will change, right? In 3 months, that train will leave the station. There's a new train in there. So this methodology really helps when you're playing the long game, building relationships. It helps from the hunting side of the house all the way to your customer success and building long-term relationships with your customers.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. So you almost have to think of it, you're almost not fighting, but yeah, a battle on two fronts, right? With the above the line and below the line, and you can't spend too much time on one or the other. It has to be both. I like that. All right. So as we go, and we'll present a couple solutions, but I'd love to do a quick poll.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to see, just out of frankly curiosity, because there's so many dramatic shifts happening in the workforce as a whole, sales as a whole. Who's excited to go back to the office, and who is like, I love this. I'm not going back. They'll have to drag me tooth and nail back. Without looking, I'm not sure if you can see it, Peter, but don't look. And what is your guess?
And I think we've had enough time now. I think people are gonna. I don't know, dude. There are pros and cons to both. I get it. Like you asked me, the changes day to day. I'm like, yeah, get me back. Let's hang out with everyone. Yeah. And on the other hand, I can see how people would say I'm loving my new normal. But let's go with they want their human interaction.
All right.
Oh,
so
the other way, wow. They love their new normal.
Other way. That's crazy. So this is so interesting. So 35% say, yes, I want to go back. I need my human interaction. I bet that 35% has kids. I'm saying probably, but I don't know. Because there is a lot of factors that go into this. And then 65% say, no way, I'm loving my new normal. That's pretty dramatic. That's crazy. I want to do another one. So yes, okay. So you like the increased comfort of working from your home. Maybe you get some time back. You can structure your day. There's certainly a ton of positives. I've worked remotely for many years. I think it would be tough for me to go back into the office. But if we're being super truthful, let's do one more poll. Who feels they are more productive at home or less?
What do you think on this one, Scott? What were your thoughts? I think given the first answer to the first one, I would say, they're turning into workaholics.
I think it's probably a yes. I think it's once there's an initial blip, I think, right? Like I remember 3 years ago, I started working remote. I had to figure everything out. Yeah. But once I figured it out, I did see, productivity go up. All right, we'll stop it there. Yeah. 72% say productivity is going up. That's crazy. If you're an organization out there and 72% of your workforce tells you I'm more productive from home, that's a big bump. That's interesting.
It is.
What do you think that tells us, Peter? Do you think, thinking of Lucid, do you think it will change? Do you think it will be mandatory for people to be in the office once this is all done, or what do
Yeah,
you think?
that's a good question. I think we're still exploring. There's so many different perspectives to take into consideration. I mentioned there's so many pros and cons that I think it's still to be determined. I'm not sure one way or the other. What I have heard though in the industry from other peers is that they're exploring like more flexibility. Right, this has caused them to take a look at the flexibility. I think an important thing is look at the data. Right, it's one thing to say, hey, look, this is how I feel we're doing, but
Mhm.
really look at, and the beauty of being in sales is you can quickly see the productivity, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
activity metrics or result metrics. So I don't know yet. I don't know exactly where we're going to be at Lucid. I see Gladys put, hey, I miss my international travel.
I'm
That's
with
a
you.
that's a big thing we hear as well from both our internally from our sales reps and our customers is, yeah, we do miss the personal interaction. Like you can get some, right? But there's some of that magic by having the video, real time video. But there is something about sharing a meal or just hanging out with each other and with your customers. That's true.
I agree. It's
Um,
hard to replicate. And
yeah,
Ron says more time to prep for the
that's true
day
too.
before leaving home.
That's
That's
true. You think about commute times, right? Like for me,
yeah.
commute depending on traffic, anywhere from 25 minutes to 45 minutes, sometimes an hour if traffic was really bad.
Hmm.
On one hand, yeah, I could decompress this to ebook, but on the other hand, I can now that time instead of getting ready and in motion in travel, I can be prepping. So I've heard that as well. That's a good point.
Yeah. I think what's really important, and I actually just recently wrote an article on remote team productivity on Microsoft's Growth Center, and it it's really important that time. I think this is why a lot of people are turning into workaholics because they replace that time that you would have taken commuting, where you're
Mm,
listening to a podcast, you're listening to music, you're certainly not on emails because you're driving, and they replace that with, okay, I'm just going to dive back into work. So I think it's really important to create these sort of buffers where that's time when you're reading, that's time when you're just
mhm.
chilling out, and be okay with that. And yeah, I think that's important to make sure that you build those into your day and actually structure them, put them on your calendar.
Yeah, for sure. That's
All
great.
right, so I want to talk a little bit of tactical. So
Yeah.
we talked about a lot of the challenges we're facing. Um, how are you running your one-on-ones? Are they structured differently now? Are they longer? Are you doing more? Are you doing less? Is it just via Zoom? Um, how are your one-on-ones looking today?
Yeah, yeah. So answer the first question. Yeah, it's done via Zoom. We have this policy internally. So hopefully, if any of you out there interact with any of our Lucid sales professionals, you'll see this camera always on, even if the other person doesn't have the camera on. We turn ours on to try to get that personal feel, that face to face interaction. So we do that as the first part. In terms of frequency, it's the same. It's been a tops down thing from our CEO, from Carl, to always have, hold that one-on-one sacred, make sure you're having it consistently, that you're taking good notes, that it's structured. And so we do that, that hasn't really changed. I would say though, what has changed is this emphasis on making sure before we go, in the office one-on-one, you go into a room, sit down, okay, hey, where we at? How's it going? But where are we at? What's going on? And I think now, because of everything that's going on, we've made it um, a conscious effort for throughout our company, throughout the org, not just in sales, but to really take the time in any of these interactions to stop, pause, and say, "Hey, how are you doing? Like, really, honestly, how are you doing? How are you holding up mentally? How's everything going with you at home? How are your family members and loved ones as well, or anyone that you care about? Because of that limited interaction that people have had, it helps to provide that outlet. Now, some people, granted, they're like, "Hey, I'm here at work, want to disconnect, let's go," and that's totally cool. It's totally fine. But this idea, just to know that the leadership team all throughout the org really does care about our people. So that is one big change, and that by emphasizing that and working on that, that's also trickled out to our customer interactions as well. When we have these customer interactions, we're training, making sure that we train our teams, and we have a deliberate effort to express genuine concern and to really understand how our customers and prospects are doing.
Yeah,
So I think that's a big part.
Yeah.
of how we're structuring it. But in terms of, is it different? Is it more frequent? Not necessarily. I would say that team meetings are a little bit more frequent. We do morning stand-ups and afternoon stand-ups across the board. So I'll have one with all my leaders, my direct reports, and we'll have a quick 15 minutes. Just, hey, what's going on? I know the title of this is how to digitally walk the sales floor. You think about, why do we walk the sales floor? And it's really to have that interaction, to check in on how the team is doing. You can get a feel, right? The vibe as you're walking the floor of how's everyone feeling. And I think digitally, you have to have that, because we're all digital now, it has to be very deliberate, right? And so we've created those stand-ups. And at the end of the day, and we have this, Keith Tanaka, our VP of Enterprise Sales, has been pushing this, see the good, this notion of see the good, be the good. So we have these moments where, we share, hey, what's good that you all saw today, right? In the see the good. And hey, where's something you've done to be the good throughout these challenges as we've made this transition. So that's helped a ton.
I like both of those. So two 15-minute stand-up huddles every day.
Every day. Yep. Yeah. It's very consistent. And if you can't make it, like at least the leadership one, if you can't make it, you need to send a delegate from your team, whether it's a team lead or a trusted person, trusted rep on your team, to come and represent the team. And there we'll actually go over, we've got, this whole transition has forced us to increase visibility. And so we'll go over, hey, what are the activity metrics? What is it looking like? Are there lulls? If there are, what's going on? Is there anything we need to be aware of? We'll also bring together, announcements with the team, like, hey, can someone send, people from this leadership team, let's send John a note for his great performance today, right? So we're increasing again. You'd normally walk the floor, give a fist bump, congratulate someone, pat on the back, and we're making sure that we're doing that constantly. And so that's one of the things we do, make sure that someone is there. And and if I can't make it, I'll have someone else run it. And we also make it clear to the entire sales org, it's an open invitation. Anyone can join if they want, right, to see what's being talked about. And so I think that helps, because the idea there is increasing transparency throughout our sales org.
Yeah, that's a big one. And you mentioned there, focusing on the good things that are happening, and calling out those who are doing, a great job. I think recognition is extremely important. Factors into motivation, productivity, a million things. And when you're in the office, it's much easier to see when something good happens. Someone just closed a deal, or BDR just got an op, and you can feel it, you can sense it, you can see it, and they get that feedback often from their peers of, hey, good job, nice work. And that's certainly lacking in this environment. So creating those channels and those ways to give that recognition is super, super important. Something I was talking to Max this morning, CEO of Sales Hacker, about getting also really a lot more specific with the feedback that we're giving people. So there was this really interesting article on there's just positive feedback, and then there's specific positive feedback. Mm-hmm. And the specific positive feedback, when you're hyper specific with what you think people are doing well, of course it reinforces that behavior, and it's valued something like 3x just a generic one. So taking that extra level, not to just be like, oh, hey man, you're doing such a good job. It's, hey, you do a fantastic job doing this when X happens, and can really, really go a long way.
Yeah, that goes along. We just got a open comment, right? Rachel mentioned that, while our office has been more productive, there is a lack of communication. So, while there might be more productivity going on, it's not always correct. So it's important to work on that barrier in communication. I think that goes along with it, right? The barrier communication, first step is make sure you are communicating. You have the mechanisms in place to communicate, like we just talked about the stand-ups and stuff. But to your point, and Max's point of like being very specific in how and what you're communicating.
Yeah, there's a lot. Anyway, I could go on a tangent here, but yeah. And then that often will lead. So when you give someone really specific positive feedback, a lot of our momentum is actually built on moods. So, when you have you're just feeling good, then something good happens. And also it's kind of this cascading waterfall effect. And then that's when you're like, I had the best day. All of this good stuff happened. And oftentimes you can be the catalyst for that to happen just by giving someone really positive, specific feedback. Then they're going to have more energy to go into their next task. They're going to complete it better. That's going to give them a sense of fulfillment. They carry that into their next meeting or task, and it's kind of this contagion. So that would be a takeaway for everyone on this webinar. Go give some hyper specific positive feedback to a colleague or
create that virtuous cycle, right?
Exactly.
I love it. That's awesome.
Awesome, man. All right. What about deals? Are you finding it harder to predict when things are going to go awry? Do you feel like you have less visibility now that you're in your mansion in Hawaii virtually?
Yeah, I wish. I would say that it's not necessarily that it's getting harder, but we've had to change and pivot, right? And what I mean by that, I kind of alluded to it earlier. This idea that the deals now can include more stakeholders, and I think at the beginning of the transition, we were caught blindsided on some of them, where customer call back and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, guys, budget's frozen. There's nothing we can do. In fact, we're downsizing, and this deal's completely off the table." So I think a lot of the shock from that transition has started to subside, and now as we talk about quote unquote the new abnormal, the new normal, and I think part of that is just being better at identifying who needs to be involved in the deal, and getting them involved early. Obviously, those of you who know Lucidchart, we do have that Lucidchart sales solution with the bidirectional sync in Salesforce. That's been crucial. We've also seen an increase in demand from our customers of, hey, I need something that I can't have this black box or just an opportunity view anymore to tell me what's going on. I really need to understand who are my reps engaging with? How does that work within the org? And so we've had to rely on that. We're doing, it's great because we're doing a re-emphasis across our entire org on best practices. Here's how we build out our conversations around the account map and around the account plan internally, and also with our customers, right? And it even helps the customers too, because you think about it, your customers are also going through this transition, this change. And so when you pull up that account map and say, hey, okay, help me understand, for them, it's also an enlightening moment. So, is it harder to stay on deals? I would say it's just as hard as it was before. There's just different nuances that we have to keep in mind.
Yeah. And I want to go a little further down that, but quickly I want to take Alfred's question here. I think it's a great question. Thank you for the question. So this one is specific. So put your biz dev hat on, your sales development hat on. Could you talk about how you've had to adjust or change your prospecting or outreach strategy given the COVID-19 situation? Are you still doing outbound? What is that looking like? Differently.
We still do our prospecting. In fact, we've turned it up a notch, right? This increased visibility has allowed us to see where we've been deficient maybe in some of our efforts and activities, and to really focus there. How it's changed the strategy? I think ever more, if anything, it's increased the importance, right? We've heard for years is the need to multi-thread our outreach strategy. What I mean by that is it's not just picking up the phone and pounding the phones. It's not just sending out emails, but it's a combination of that. It's not just social selling with LinkedIn and other social platforms. It's incorporating a mix of all of those. And so I think if anything, the change has been an emphasis on the focus for that. We've got, one of our team, I can't take credit for this idea, but one of our team members came up with the idea of let's dial our inbox. And so what they mean by that is every morning, instead, you get up in the morning, you're going through your emails, or throughout the day, right? You take time, you block out time to go through those emails instead of, it's so tempting to just quickly reply. Yeah, that works for me. With the limited face-to-face interaction, people are actually more willing to they want the interaction. So we do this thing called dialing your inbox, where it's like, okay, before I hit reply or reply to this, I'm going to just quickly dial them, right? If it's internal too, we even do that internally. If it's an internal issue that I want to address, I have a question. Instead of quickly slacking them or whatever messaging service you use, you just do a quick video call. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, hey, I had this question. What about this? And so I think that's helped with our prospecting efforts. One of our reps made an interesting observation, found that, they were dialing and emailing and felt like the emails, when you look at the results, they're getting a lot of responses. The emails were being really effective. And so logically the rep says, I don't need to dial anymore. And I get it too. You look at the data, you're like, don't waste your time on it. Just hit them up with emails. But what's interesting is once the dialing stopped and the other forms of multi-threaded outreach stopped, the email response also decreased, right? And so it's this idea of multi-threading. right? Sending an email, hey, I left you a voicemail, let's follow up here. And just remember that people are busy. People are in front of their screens all day, and you know, it's now easier than ever. I'm sure they're getting inundated with all of these outreach messages. So staying consistent, persistent, and again, putting, you know, taking the time to do the research and understand what your customer might be or your prospect might be going through.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that point around omnichannel is interesting. So when you have all these different channels, it's easy to disregard one that maybe, you know, isn't working. Like you said with the
Yeah,
phone, it reminds me of this time, you know, I was running a BD team and we introduced a video solution. So we would send, you know, videos out, and people got a little frustrated. They're like, hey, you know, we don't seem to be getting a lot of responses to our videos, direct responses. But when we introduced it, our overall opportunities we're creating went up quite dramatically. And what
interesting.
seemed to be happening, I was like, you know, let's stick with it. And what seemed to be happening was that would be one touch in a, you know, 13 touch
See,
sequence that we'd
yeah,
have, and then we would call people and oftentimes reference the video, and that would be the connection for the people. Like, oh, you're the, you know,
yeah,
funny gal who sent me the video, and that would put us in a better position to have that thoughtful
that's
conversation.
so
So
true. Just because you
yeah,
don't get a response from whatever medium of your outreach effort, remember it doesn't mean that it's all in vain, right? This
yeah,
idea of this omni-channel, you know, coming at the working with your prospects and customers with through different channels, it helps them make those connections and humanize who you are, right? So
totally. Yeah,
that's
I
great.
often think of it. It's no different than marketing you see out in the B2C world, right? Like, what makes you buy your Nike shoes? Is it the, you know, you saw Michael Jordan wearing them on the documentary, or you saw a billboard, or you saw a YouTube ad, or whatever? It's all these
Yeah,
different things that end up making that final decision for you. And it's hard to attribute just one of those factors. And without
so
all
true.
of them, it falls apart. Um, okay, so is there anything you've been pleasantly surprised about? Like,
Yeah.
did you have any worries that you're like, wow, this is not as bad as I thought it would
Yeah. You know, the transition, you know, when it first happened, you're always worried about the team and the relationships, right? The interpersonal relationships are so important, and the culture of the team, the vibe is so important. You know, one thing I've been really pleasantly surprised is just how well the team has been able to bond together. And you know, people have really stepped up and taken help to lift what they stand and to help lead, even if they don't have the title, right? They've taken that on, and the compassion that people have for each other. I think we've sent, you know, our local cookie companies here, I'm sure, love us because we're always sending cookies to each other, or you know, door dashing meals to each other, and so that's been a really great thing to see is to watch how everyone has bonded together.
be.
Um, you know, I would say it's important to maintain. You know, that does bring us to the challenge, right? A big challenge is maintaining that culture of your team,
Hmm.
because the dynamics change, right? Even if part of your team was already remote, part where we're in the office, et cetera, you got to be mindful that yeah, the dynamics can change. You have to deliberately put in mechanisms to build camaraderie. So some of our teams, they'll even do like they have like an open Zoom meeting certain times of the day that, hey, if you don't have anything going on or you just need to chat with someone, you just go into it, and there's always someone in there, and they're just, you know, it's kind of like you're trying to replicate passing someone in the hallway, or just
Yeah,
sitting down at a break room with them, and so they do that, and there's been tremendous positive feedback from things like that. I think
yeah,
a big challenge is team activities, like doing those. I know some of our teams, they can do online games and things like that, but just having to think outside the box now. How do you do
yeah,
those team activities, doing team lunches, etc.?
yeah. I really like that, and I've written about the importance of informal meetings, which are
Yeah.
so important that you guys have created that. I had a friend of mine works at Square, and he's been working remotely for a long time. And one of the things he identified, once he spends a lot of time overseas in Japan and stuff, and was he would miss all that banter. That, you know, it really bonds people together, and also it actually gives. He put it really well. It gives you a platform to ask almost dumb questions, right? Like when
Yeah.
if I send you a calendar invite and it's all super formal and hey, here's a meeting on the calendar. It seems like it has to be formal. We have to like go through an agenda versus if there's just an informal environment, you can ask those questions in passing and not feel like you're wasting someone's time, which is big. And I think it's important to create those environments, particularly if you're onboarding, like you said, you're actually hiring new people. They might need those spaces to ask the quote unquote dumb questions.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Um, I also wanted to highlight another thing you said. I think that's genius. Do you have any more data around? So, did your whole team do this? Call everyone in your inbox. I think that's a great strategy that I think more people should employ or at least give a try. I know I'm answering my phone more for
Yeah.
sure. How did that go? That
Yeah,
experiment.
the data, I don't have the data in terms of like what the response rates were. I haven't dug into it. We have it, but I can tell you that activity increased, right? And those weeks where activity increases, you can see the pipeline and new opportunities have increased as well.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to a lot of what we're talking about ties to, and going through this, right? This challenge that we all go through, it's psychologically and emotionally, it's a challenge for everyone. And I think doing things like this, like the dial your inbox, helps with the feeling of having fulfillment in your day and being productive. That was one of the things, right? Especially through this transition, that hey, I might go a day without, I didn't have a new op today, I didn't close a deal today, or I didn't have any solid meetings with the customers today. But I actually have to show for it, right? Activity metrics. What I'm driving at is activity metrics are more important than ever, not from a micromanagement standpoint, but from the standpoint of I have something to show for what I've done today, and I can see, I can see my efforts. Right? There's actual a tangible metric there that represents my efforts. Right? I know our sales dev, our setting teams out there have that pretty dialed in, but for the most part, closing teams, we haven't really had to focus on that too much, right? But by shining that light on that, it helps get them in, get our teams in that state of mind where they feel like they're moving the needle.
Yeah, that's a big one. I want to quickly go back because we touched on it briefly, but I would love to see if we can go a little bit deeper on it. Is this idea of account planning, and you expressed it's a little bit, or not more difficult, but it's different now. You can't, hey, we've got this big op with Uber, let's all get in a room and we're going to have a whiteboard and we're going to whiteboard all the stakeholders out and who owns what. And some of those meetings can be extremely productive to get everyone on the same page and put together a plan of attack. Of course, we can't do that anymore when we're not in the same location. What have you been doing to sort of simulate that? I don't even know what you want to call that. War room,
deal storming, war room, deal collaboration, etc. One of the things that we've done systematically here is we actually have that deal council, right? Executive deal council in the calendar. There is a stakeholder that owns it. One of our sales leaders actually owns it. Make sure that the agenda is sent out. Make sure that we have the deals prepared for that. The account plans are prepped for that meeting to make good use of our executives' time. And slides are reviewed beforehand to make sure that the correct information is displayed.
So that's every week. Piece. You have one of those every week. Okay. Yeah. And who's involved from the executive?
Yeah, from the executive side. Yeah, our CEO and president. Nice. It's important for them, and so they show up. Our CFO as well. Our legal team, our general counsel is there most often, and then our VPs of sales are there. And then if you're presenting. If it's your deal, the rep shows up. The rep doesn't have to go to every single one, but the rep will show up and their manager as well. And it's just, it also helps the team feel that they have support and that there's, that there's visibility, executive visibility and executive sponsorship on their deals. Now, the tactical logistics behind it, obviously we use our own sales solution, but if you don't have something like that, it's important to keep it in the same place. The same thing, right? The best practices of CRM hygiene and everything all applies here. And whether it's a Google Doc or any other type of collaborative platform, it's important to have that. Ever more important because, like you said, we're not all in the same virtual room. But where does the data go after that, right? Where do the action items go? So I think a big part, for our success is one, leveraging an account planning solution, but also having a stakeholder that's in charge of that, that can keep all the information, that can take the notes and have the action items and have the follow up. All too often, it's especially growing really fast and running really fast as a high performance org. I know it's difficult out there. You've got all these different initiatives and staying on top of them, making sure that all the information goes into one spot and that everyone knows where to access that information is crucial.
Yeah, totally. And I'll do a quick Lucidchart plug.
Thank you.
I know at Outreach we use Lucidchart, and it's very helpful for that account mapping, and now more than ever, right? When you can't simulate that, so have at least a tool similar where you can visualize it. Like you said, there's so much data out there that visualizing, visual learning is so much better. Okay, a couple more questions here, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. I want to know what you're seeing. Like, what are the big red flags that's killing your reps' productivity right now in this new remote environment?
Yeah, I'd say we kind of touched on it earlier, right? This idea that, hey, now I've got more time in the day, and so there's this natural tendency to become a workaholic.
Yeah.
And in so doing, we become our own worst enemy. So I'd say, for our sales leaders, for all the sales reps out there listening, and sales supporting roles listening, please make sure that you keep a finger on the pulse of your team's mental health, making sure that they don't burn out. If you're all in this webinar, you care about your careers, you're all top performers, and overachievers, right? But because of that, just be careful. We've made it also a deliberate effort to remind our teams, hey, make sure you take a day, right? Or make sure you take time. If you need more than a day, fine. But make sure you take time to take care of yourself, to take care of if you have, you're with the family or loved ones, and be mindful of that. Because I think that would be the number one killer, is just themselves, just, approaching burnout. They're working longer hours. The increased urgency, honestly, right? In this environment, we feel the increase. We all do. We all feel the increased urgency to ever more bring in the revenue that we need to support our companies and support the families of our employees, our team members. And so I think that's a big one, is watching out for that burnout. I think the other is, because of, if you're a team that was in the office and now you're not, be mindful of your newer team members, or when you're launching new initiatives, you need to increase communication even more, increase the resources. What I mean by that is do you have the people available to provide answers? When you're implementing a new process, you're launching a new product or a new system, do you have the adequate support? I think that can be a big productivity killer, is launching something new and then not having the support, and the reps at home, right? They can't just lean over, hey, how do we do this again? It's now, I got to find someone that, oh man, I don't want to bother so-and-so, or, team Slack message maybe, but just make sure that you have avenues to provide that support and information for your teams. I think if you've hired right, you don't have to worry. You don't have to micromanage and say, okay, what are you doing right now? Pick up the phone, right? You've hired right. You can empower and trust your people. Keep an eye on the metrics though, and make sure that your team members have visibility to those metrics. If they can see where they're performing relative to the day before or the week before, they know they need to fix something, but make sure that that's visible for them. So I'd say to wrap this all up, watch mental health and overworking, approaching burnout. Make sure that you have the adequate support for your team members, especially the ones that transitioned where remote is new to them. And then third, make sure you have visibility into whatever metrics that you're watching your activity and results.
Yeah, I love it, man. The visibility piece is huge, and it's funny. A lot of leaders almost seem like, they don't want to be too Big Brother-esque and like be watching everything. But from a rep's perspective, most reps I talk to want that, right? They need to understand where they are so they can get to where they want to go. So making that as socialized as possible. Okay, I'm going to sneak one more question in, and then I'll let you go. Hopefully, surf some waves or something. Okay, so this is from Caitlin. Caitlin, great question. So this one. Okay, so basically, it's around what opportunity, what can sales leadership do to find opportunities? So essentially, is there opportunity in this environment we find ourselves in. Have you found any opportunities in this environment?
Absolutely. I would say listen, right? Listen more, listen closer. Sales as a sales leader, join more calls than you have before, right? It is easier being remote now. You can just jump from call to call as opposed to having to go in a room or go into a meeting, right? If you have got different reps that are out on site. So I'd say listen more and do deeper discovery. The way that you're going to find those opportunities is really going in and doing that deeper discovery. We do again back to shout out to proactive selling, this idea of 3 whys, right? When you hear something from a client like, hey, we have this big initiative to focus on X. Okay, well, help me understand why that's important. And then they tell you that answer. Listen very carefully, because in that answer you'll find another question. Hey, explain to me again. Now, explain to me why that piece is so important to your company, or explain to me why this is now on your radar. Help me understand why your CEO is asking this question, and then listen some more. And as you do that, you're bound to find other opportunities there, right? Whether it's an opportunity to expand an existing relationship or existing deal, or if it's an opportunity to find a whole nother opportunity, right? Maybe one op is dead, and so we train on that, especially where you're working with multiple lines of business. Maybe one initiative, the train has left the station, that initiative is dead. It doesn't mean that there's other initiatives that you can find. So a big part of that is again, active listening, do that deeper discovery, dig into the why, right? It's so easy to just ask that question once, like, hey, tell me why that is, and then take that answer and be like, okay, next question, right? Take the time to really do meaningful, deep discovery. And I think as you do that as a sales leader, and as you teach your teams to do that, you'll find more success and be able to flip over rocks that you wouldn't have otherwise flipped over. Great
Totally.
question, Kevin.
Always goes back to that discovery, the most important part of the sales process, that active listening, discovery. I totally agree. And, highlighting something you said there is a big opportunity to take a deep, hard look at your existing accounts, nurture those relationships, treat them like gold, map out other ones who look like those accounts, and start targeting those. Well, Peter, thank you, man. It was really great to catch up. It certainly has been too long. Thank you, everyone who joined us. Great engagement throughout. And yeah, man, I'll let you go. But thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you.